Hey, what's up everybody? It's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin, and as we move right along here in the programming series, the next program that is up for review is the Lilliebridge method. Now, after reading this program, I've developed a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. On the one hand, I don't think you should charge anybody $40 for a shoddy 17-page ebook. And on the other hand, this program is a direct slap in the face to everybody in the powerlifting world, me included, who feels the need to overcomplicate their programming. The fact that the entire program can be laid out in less than 17 pages tells you a whole lot right there. The best are the best because of who they are and not what they do, especially not because of one isolated variable like a program. It just goes to show that if you want to be tops in the world, you have to be tops in all the areas that make a lifter great. It's not going to be enough just to have some magical program. In fact, there is no holy grail program. I wish I could just stop this video right now and leave it at that so it just all sinks in for you guys. The Lilliebridges, the most famous and successful family in powerlifting, have a method which can be described in maybe 3 or 4 pages. That's it. That's all they do. It's really that simple. But I'm not going to stop this video right here, obviously, and we're going to go ahead and review the rest of the program. Now, normally I don't go too heavily into the actual lifting credentials of any given author because it isn't necessarily the most relevant factor in my opinion. As I've already touched on in this video, the results of any particular lifter, in my opinion, says more about the character of that person than it does about the quality of their lifting program. Now, it's a different story entirely though when you have dozens of people who are successful with your method. And in the case of the Lilliebridge family, you really cannot ignore their enormous success. So, let's talk about the 3 members of the Lilliebridge family who promote this program. First, we'll talk about Ernie Lilliebridge Jr. Ernie Jr. is the all-time world record holder in the squat and the total in the 198-pound weight class. All time, better than anybody ever. Eric Lilliebridge is the all-time world record holder in the 275-pound weight class, as well as holding the all-time world record for the squat at 275. In fact, he has one of the 5 highest raw powerlifting totals ever. And he did that as a junior, 23 years old. Now, Ernie Sr. is the slacker of the group because he's only the best 308-pound powerlifter in the United States. Unlike his sons, he doesn't quite have the all-time world records. But regardless, and of course I'm being facetious here, he's an amazingly accomplished lifter. Regardless, the point is that this is the single most successful group and family in the history of raw powerlifting. Now, let's talk about some of the actual background and context that went into this program. Ernie Sr., as far as I know, and as far as anybody knows, is the coach of the Lilliebridge family. Now, Ernie came up during the golden age of powerlifting, so to speak, when Larry Pacifico was still putting on the best meets in the history of the sport. Ernie Sr. was coached and groomed by Ernie France, and in fact, Ernie Sr. is now the coach of the France power team. Of course, it isn't any surprise that Ernie Sr.'s programming is heavily influenced by all of the best powerlifters from the 70s and 80s. And in fact, what you can see is that his program does have its roots in traditional Western periodization, which is what those guys used at the time. I'm put into somewhat of a conundrum. The entire ebook is 17 pages, so what you're really paying for here is the program. As such, ethically, I cannot just lay out the program in this video for you guys, because that's really what you're paying for when you get the book. That said, I do want to give you a general gist of how the program works. So let's take a look. So like I said, we're just going to talk about the general gist of the program here. The default program features 3 times per week training, though there are some suggestions for alternative splits provided. The Lilliebridges bench on Wednesdays, squat and deadlift on Saturdays, and they do their lower body accessory work on Sundays. With the Lilliebridge method, you only go heavy on the squat and deadlift once every 2 weeks. You perform both movements on the same day. So if you're going heavy on the squat one week, you're going light on the deadlift that week. And likewise, if you're going heavy on the deadlift one week, you're going to go light on the squat that week. The structure is similar for bench. You alternate between high rep weeks and weeks where you take 3 singles at increasing percentages. As far as the main movements are concerned, you're basically just working up to a single top set at about 85% plus every single week. Yes, it's really that simple. The percentages are increased each week as you get closer to the meet, but you just work up to a single top set for max reps. The program never falls below about 85% in terms of the main work sets. It's important to note that the percentages are based off of your last context max. Now, the program features an absolute boatload of bodybuilding style assistance. I can't list all of it here. For both upper and lower body, you'll be doing about 6 to 10 assistance exercises ranging from 4 to 6 sets of 8 to 20 reps. Like I said, this is true blue bodybuilding style assistance work. You're only doing one work set on the main lifts, and the rest of the volume in the program comes from this bodybuilding assistance. As far as planning goes, this is a powerlifting program, so it ends in a peak. The program's 10 weeks long. Let's take a look. The typical Lilliebridge method is 10 weeks long. So in week 7, you perform your last heavy squat. In week 8, you perform your last heavy deadlift. Week 9 is a deload week for the lower body. And during week 10, meet week, you don't lift at all. As for bench, week 8 is your last heavy week. Week 9, you take openers. And week 10, meet week, again, you don't lift at all. You just wait for the meet. Now, I heard from a lot of different people that the Lillibridges essentially used Western periodization. For those of you guys who don't know, Western periodization is basically where you progress from higher reps to lower reps over the course of a training cycle. Usually it's 16 weeks long, and you'll spend 2 to 3 weeks doing 8s, 2 to 3 weeks doing 5s, 2 to 3 weeks doing 3s, and so on and so forth until you get down to singles and peak for meet. However, that's not actually how the Lillibridge method works. What the Lillibridges have done is abbreviated this process by essentially cutting out the light weeks. So you alternate squats and deadlifts every week, right? But every time that you do either of those lifts, you're going heavy. In fact, you never go below 85% on the main movements during this program. And as far as the bench is concerned, you alternate between heavy singles and rep outs. So that's not really Western periodization either. In fact, this program doesn't really contain periodization in the traditional sense. Yes, over the course of the program, the weights get heavier and heavier, and so you're going to get less reps on your AMRAP, and in that sense, you do progress from higher volumes to lower volumes as you peak, but there is no specific period of emphasis on different qualities in the Lillibridge method. In fact, you're using concurrent periodization because every workout, you're either going heavy or doing reps on the main movement, and you're also doing a ton of bodybuilding every single workout. So again, concurrent periodization, because the bodybuilding stuff is helping you to get bigger and the main movement work is helping you to get stronger, and you do all of it in the same workout every single week, every single time. Now, while the periodization of this program would suggest that it's not necessarily appropriate for advanced athletes who generally need a lot of volume to make progress on any given quality, the fact of the matter is that this program has so much recovery built into it that it still works amazingly well for advanced athletes. Because you got to think of it like this: you're only going heavy on each body part once per week. So you have a ton of time to recover from the volumes that you're doing. And this allows you to get in enough bodybuilding work to make progress while at the same time doing that heavy work and recovering in the same session as well. I honestly can't imagine that anybody would have recovery issues on a program like this. As we all know, intermediates are going to need variation from week to week in terms of volume. And that's certainly present on the Lillibridge program because, for example, on the bench press, you alternate between singles and then an AMRAP on the next week. On the squat and the deadlift, you alternate between going heavy on each of those movements. So you are getting variation from week to week. And in the grander sense, there is some variation from mesocycle to mesocycle. We have to define the mesocycle as 2 weeks long on this program because you alternate squats and deadlifts and you alternate heavy bench with AMRAP bench, as many reps as possible, for those of you who don't know what AMRAP is. And each mesocycle, the intensity increases by about 2 to 4%, so you're going to get less total overall volume by a little bit. But that said, overall, you do have variation from week to week and a tiny bit from mesocycle to mesocycle, which is appropriate for the intermediate trainee. And at the same time, there's so much recovery on this program that even the most advanced athletes can still use it profitably. The biggest concern about training plans like this that are just so common in American powerlifting is detraining for the natural lifter. Natural lifters seem to need more frequency than unnatural lifters or enhanced lifters, and the reasons for this are fairly unclear. However, I suspect that it has to do with the fact that drugs improve your neural efficiency, particularly testosterone. So here's the thing, naturals really need to focus on maximizing their neural gains, which means high frequencies and exposures to the technical movements so that they can build that CNS efficiency. However, if you're a lifter who's using a ton of test, well, your neural efficiency is going to be through the roof anyways, and it's not going to go through depressions because you're artificially stimulating it every single week when you inject. This is ironic because drugs help you recover faster, but the truth of the matter seems to be that naturals train more often and do more volume than unnatural lifters. So while I suspect that this programming will work amazingly well for big enhanced lifters who need this recovery, I think that many naturals will have better progress on programs with more frequencies and higher volumes on the main movements. For your average natural trainee who is of a lesser qualification as a powerlifter, who doesn't have over 200 pounds of lean body mass, this is just not enough work for them to make optimal progress in my experience. If you look at the top natural lifters, virtually none of them train like this. And again, we can only speculate as to the reasons why, but it does appear to be the case. So that said, if you're a bigger natural athlete, like somebody who's over 250 pounds, maybe 300 pounds, or you're just an older trainee who has a lot of issues with recovery, this might be a program that works extremely well for you. But I'd be remiss to call this optimal for really any natural trainee. Again, natural trainees need more frequency and more volume to optimize their neural gains, to maximize CNS efficiency, and to build muscle. I just don't think this is enough. As far as specificity is concerned, I think you guys know what I'm going to say on this one. I just don't agree with the idea that powerlifters should be doing the majority of their volume through bodybuilding style assistance work. Now, I must concede that after having a brief conversation with Paul Carter about this subject, it is true that the vast majority of the most successful American powerlifters in the 70s and 80s used exactly this training style, with heavy, hard, short work on the main movements and a ton of bodybuilding style assistance. However, it does appear that the top natural lifters in the IPF do not train like this. And again, we don't really know why, we can only speculate. My idea, again, that I've already presented in this video, is that it probably has to do with the fact that drugs artificially improve neural efficiency. So because these guys who are enhanced already have their neural efficiency levels through the roof, the more beneficial aspect to their performance is just through adding more muscle mass that they can then take advantage of. However, for the natural trainee, those neural gains is going to be so important that doing more frequent, heavier work and more overall work on the main movements ends up becoming more and more important because they need to maximize those neural efficiencies through other means. Again, I'm not saying that building muscle is not important. If you want to make long-term progress in powerlifting, you can only make so many gains through neural efficiency. In fact, it's relatively a small margin compared to hypertrophy. I mean, you can increase your total strength on a movement from anywhere between 100% to 700% depending on where you started. Neural efficiency and CNS efficiency, on the other hand, you would do amazing if you got a lifetime improvement of 100%. That would just be amazing. So we know that for long-term progress, you need to eventually gain weight. It's just the reality of the situation. That is not what we're contesting here. What we're contesting is the best way to go about gaining that muscle if you are a natural. And in my opinion, it's much better to be specific about it. If you're a natural trainee, the only way to make long-term progress is if your volume slowly trends upwards over the years. You can't rely on anything else. In order to keep producing new adaptations, you have to keep providing your body with a bigger and bigger stimulus. It's just like getting really tan, and I keep using this analogy because it's so good. If you get dark enough, at some point you're going to have to go into the sun longer and longer and longer to keep getting darker, right? There's just no way around it. Well, it's the same thing with getting stronger. At some point, the volume that you're exposing yourself to has to keep going up little by little if you want to make progress in the long run. So as a natural, in my opinion, the best way to gain hypertrophy is by keeping the training more specific and eating in a caloric surplus. Over time, the fact that you need to do more volume to keep making progress is going to result in slow hypertrophy gains that are more typical of the natural trainee, who might only be capable of putting on 2 to 3 pounds of muscle per year after they've been training for 3 to 5 years or so. So you got to keep in mind context here. Again, natural lifters just don't have the neural advantages of enhanced lifters, and there could be other explanations as well, but the bottom line is that when you look at the top natural lifters, they do not train with this high bodybuilding volume style. The last thing I want to say in terms of specificity is that you have to love how the Lilliebridges have changed around traditional Western periodization. They simply cut out the lighter phases on the main movements, so you're actually going heavy all the time. And if that's not specific to powerlifting, then nothing is. As far as overload is concerned, the Lillibridge method uses a combination of progressive overload and AMRAP sets, or as many reps as possible. Each mesocycle is 2 weeks long because you alternate between the squat and the deadlift and between heavy benching and AMRAP benching. Each mesocycle, the percentages are increased by about 2 to 4%. So progressive overload is the primary way that you're making progress here. You're handling heavier and heavier weights over time. But because of the AMRAP sets, you're also given the opportunity to set new rep records. As far as fatigue management goes, I do not think this program has enough volume or frequency to be optimal for the natural lifter. Look, I'm not going to be that fool who says that this won't work for natural trainees. Again, you have to be foolish to make blanket statements like that. I just don't believe it to be optimal for natural trainees. In my experience, natural trainees, particularly smaller ones who are under 200 pounds or under even 200 pounds of total lean body mass, are going to detrain doing 1 work set per 2 weeks on the squat and deadlift. That's just not enough. That's less volume than novice programs like Starting Strength or Strong Lifts 5x5. There's just no need for people of lower classifications to be doing this little volume. Almost no natural trainees need this amount of recovery. However, the situation does appear to be markedly different for enhanced lifters. And again, I can only speculate as to why this is the case. If you take a guy like Stan Efferding, for example, who is another person who set an all-time world record using this style of training, alternating the squat and the deadlift heavy each week, you can see that there's a pretty big difference between the amount of mass this guy is carrying around and your average natural trainee. And in my opinion, because of how much mass is packed onto these guys' frames, when they do an 800 or a 900 pound squat, they're creating total systemic damage that is far beyond what any natural is capable of. They have so much mass that the micro tears, the total micro tears from each session, the total systemic damage, and beyond just the muscles, is so much more immense that the recovery times are just elongated significantly. So ironically, you end up having the bigger, stronger athletes training less than the athletes who are smaller and weaker when it comes to naturals versus enhanced. Whereas if you look at natural versus natural, the best naturals train more than the naturals who are in lower classifications. It's very different on the enhanced side of the spectrum, where the lower classified enhanced lifters tend to train more than the most qualified enhanced lifters. But really, don't take my word for it on this one. Go find out for yourself. Go study the top IPF lifters. Go study the top lifters who are not tested. Now, the literature suggests that muscle protein synthesis peaks within 16 to 48 hours after a training session. That means that the stimulus that you get to build muscle is done signaling to the body after about 2 days, depending on the population. Now, this would suggest to us that to maximize muscle protein synthesis, the amount of muscle tissue that we build, we need to train more frequently. However, that just doesn't appear to be what the top American powerlifters do. On the enhanced side of the spectrum, they don't train that way. They train infrequently. Now, the IPF lifters, on the other hand, train usually 5 or 6 times a week. So what's the difference? Who really knows? We can't pinpoint one specific thing. But for anybody who's interested in this phenomenon, just go out and look and you'll see it for yourself. It's there for anybody to see, and it's just what the reality is. Go find out for yourself. I highly encourage you to do so. Now, the Lillibridge method does address individual differences in a few different ways. For one, you have AMRAP sets, so you can make progress at your own pace, more or less. If the jumps in weight are too slow for you, you can always set new rep records. Additionally, the Lillibridges give you different templates that you can consider in the ebook. If you're somebody who wants more frequency, instead of doing your bench and your bench accessories on the same day, you could split that up. If you're an older trainee who only wants to train twice a week because you have recovery issues, well, instead of having a separate day for your lower body accessories, you could combine that with your lower body session and only work out twice a week. However, overall, as you guys know what I'm going to say here, this program mostly ignores individual differences because there is no auto-regulation of intensity or volume. Now, auto-regulation of intensity is important because, again, you want to make sure that you're working in the ranges that are going to be most beneficial to max strength. That isn't a huge issue on the Lillibridge program, simply because I find it highly unlikely that many people are going to get strong so fast that anything above 85% suddenly falls below 80% in only 2 weeks. So this isn't really that important of a criticism. But nonetheless, it is feasible that you could start getting like 8 or 9 reps on your AMRAPs, and that's when we start to stray away from powerlifting specificity. But in terms of this, it's just not that important with the way that the Lillibridge program structures intensity. Now, in terms of volume autoregulation, it's critical because the program has no volume autoregulation. You do 1 work set every 2 weeks on the squat and deadlift. And unless you're going to add in more volume via your bodybuilding style assistance work, there's no way to make that up anywhere inside the program. Now, I hate to keep harping on Mike Teixeira's RTS like it's the savior of powerlifting programming or something like that, but the bottom line is that you can apply RTS principles to any programming in order to auto-regulate the volume. Now, here's the question for you. If you can modify a program to include auto-regulation of volume, and you don't have to change the spirit or the soul of the program to do so, then why wouldn't you? It makes the program better, so why wouldn't you do it? I don't have a good answer to that question. I don't think there is a good answer to that question. Look, I personally believe that any program which ignores auto-regulation of volume cannot be fully optimal. It can be optimized further, even if everything else about it is correct. Because as I've said a million times, if you're sick, you need less volume than on the days when you're healthy. If you're dieting, you need less volume than on the days when you're bulking. If you are a 50-year-old trainee, you need less volume than the 18-year-old kid. These things have to be addressed in your program. Everybody is different, and it's not good enough to say, listen to your body, because a lot of people don't know what that means and they don't know how to do it. So, again, in my opinion, if the program doesn't include volume autoregulation, it's missing a component that it could have, which would make it even better. Look, at some point it becomes pretty damn foolish to argue with a track record of success as immense as the Lillibridges. This program has produced world records both inside and outside the family for multiple different lifters. So, I mean, when you're looking at not 1, not 2, but 3 #1 lifters in the USA who use this program, you're just a fool if you say it doesn't work. Clearly something works pretty damn well. That said, I just don't think it's optimal for natural lifters. I don't think that deadlifting every other week is optimal for natural lifters. I don't think doing 1 work set per main movement is enough volume for most natural lifters. I don't think having 1 time per week frequency is enough for natural lifters. And I don't think that getting most of your volume from bodybuilding style assistance is optimal. It's just not specific enough. And finally, this program doesn't include auto-regulation. So overall, I would not recommend it to natural lifters. That said, if you're an enhanced lifter, it might be worth a shot at this point. I mean, how many world records does it take for you to give something a try? You just can't deny the track record. So if you guys are interested in reading more about the Lillibridge method, in terms of reading the actual program, I'm going to put a link to their ebook in the description box for you guys. Moving forward, I just got word that my man Johnny Candido put out a revision to his 6-week program. Now, I've been waiting for him to do this since I reviewed his first program, and he told me that he was going to. And the 6-week program is actually the single most requested program during the entire programming series. So that's got to tell you something about Johnny's popularity right there. And yes, I do keep track of those requests, and it is the single most requested one. So I really enjoyed reviewing his first program, and I'm hoping that since this is kind of his advanced version, it's going to be even more fun to take a deeper look at it. And I'm really excited to see this one, and I hope it's even better than the last one. So be on the lookout for that if you're a fan of Johnny Candido. If you guys found this content interesting, informative, or entertaining, please like, share, and send it out into the interwebs for me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to pop over to the PowerliftingToWin.com forums, and I will address any issues that you have personally. If you're looking for personalized, customized training, go ahead and email me at admin@PowerliftingToWin.com for more information about Powerlifting to Win's coaching services. You can find that email address in the description box. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out PowerliftingToWin.com for more great powerlifting information. Have a nice day.